Tonight we're examining a disappearance that still unsettles investigators nearly 2 decades later. This is the case of a young woman who didn't simply vanish. She was erased between moments. And buried inside this investigation is one deeply disturbing detail that suggests the story never truly went cold. It just went quiet. As we retrace what happened, you'll see why this case continues to resist explanation, and why new developments are forcing it back into focus. Viewer discretion is advised.
January 24th, 2006, just after 7 in the morning. A cell phone that had always been reliable stops responding. There is no emergency call, no abrupt goodbye, no indication that anything is wrong. One moment, the device is part of Jennifer Kesse's daily rhythm, and the next, it becomes silent. The night before, Jennifer had spoken with her parents, Drew and Joyce Kesse. The call was ordinary in the way that loving, routine calls often are. She talked about work, about plans, about the life she was actively building for herself in Orlando. Nothing in her voice suggested urgency, nothing suggested fear. By mid-morning, that silence would feel unbearable. Within hours, Jennifer's absence would expose a case defined not by what was found, but by what never was. A car that moved without its owner, surveillance footage that showed a person but never a face, evidence collected before the science existed to understand it. This is not a story about a woman who vanished without warning. It is a story about a signal that fractured, then waited decades to be understood. Jennifer Kesse was 24 years old. She was a University of Central Florida graduate with a degree in finance, a rising professional working as a project manager, and someone who took pride in structure. Her life was not chaotic. It was measured, planned. When Jennifer bought her condo at Mosaic at Millenia, it represented independence she had worked hard to earn. She was living alone for the first time, decorating carefully, establishing routines that reflected control and safety. Her parents noticed this about her. Drew Kesse would later describe Jennifer as cautious, someone who paid attention to her surroundings and didn't take unnecessary risks. Joyce Kesse remembered her daughter as organized to a fault, someone who laid out her clothes the night before work and rarely deviated from her schedule. That's why January 24th stood out almost immediately. Jennifer did not arrive at work that morning. She did not call ahead. She did not respond to messages. By late morning, concern turned into alarm. When her parents arrived at the condo, nothing felt right precisely because everything looked normal. The bed was made. Her outfit for the day appeared prepared. The shower had been used. There were no signs of forced entry, no obvious struggle, no chaos. For Drew and Joyce, this was the first unbearable realization. Whatever happened to their daughter did not allow her time to react. Later that day, another development deepened the mystery. Jennifer's black Chevy Malibu was found parked at the Huntington on the Green apartment complex, approximately 1.2 miles away. The car was not hidden. It was not damaged. It was parked as if it belonged there. And then came the surveillance footage. A camera captured a person exiting Jennifer's car and walking away calmly. The figure appeared average in build, dressed like a laborer, hands in pockets, no visible urgency. But as the person walked past the camera, a fence post blocked the view. Every time the face should have been visible. Investigators would later acknowledge that the timing required for this to happen repeatedly was extraordinarily unlikely. To Jennifer's parents, it felt less like coincidence and more like the system itself had failed to see. Before the investigation fractured, there was a brief moment when the data still aligned. This is that moment. January 23rd, 2006. 10 p.m. Jennifer speaks with her parents. Her voice is calm, no distress. January 24th, approximately 8 a.m. Her cell phone stops responding. By 8 a.m., Jennifer does not arrive at work. Late morning, family attempts contact, no response. Midday, Jennifer's vehicle is moved and parked at Huntington on the Green. This window, less than 6 hours, contains every confirmed data point in the case. Everything after this is where the signal degrades. Investigators initially focused on Mosaic at Millenia, and for good reason. The complex was undergoing construction, workers came and went, records were incomplete, oversight was limited. From the Kesse family's perspective, this environment created opportunity but also confusion. Dozens of potential persons of interest moved through the property daily. Interviews were conducted, but language barriers and time constraints complicated the process. Tips poured in from across Florida and beyond, sightings, rumors, theories. For Drew and Joyce, each call carried hope and then disappointment. This is how static works in an investigation. It consumes attention while offering little clarity. Meanwhile, surveillance footage from Huntington on the Green continued to haunt the case. The person who parked the car did not behave like someone in panic. The walk was controlled, familiar. Independent analysts would later study gait and posture, noting behavioral consistency rather than randomness. Years passed. The Kesse family refused to accept silence as an ending. They pursued legal action to obtain the full case file from the Orlando Police Department. When they finally gained access, what they found was not malice, but fragmentation. Pieces of evidence that had never been fully synthesized. Among those pieces were trace materials collected from Jennifer's car, including a damp towel. At the time, it was cataloged and stored. No meaningful results came from it. But Drew Kesse never forgot it. He understood something investigators could not yet act on. Evidence does not expire, only the technology used to interpret it does. The placement of Jennifer's car was not random. At 1.2 miles from Mosaic at Millenia, the Huntington on the Green complex sat outside the internal camera coverage of Jennifer's residence, but within a zone with limited surveillance and lower patrol frequency. This area functioned as a dead zone. Parking the car there reduced exposure while allowing a clean exit. This was not opportunistic behavior, it suggested planning. For nearly 2 decades, the case did not go cold because it lacked evidence. It went quiet because the science could not hear what the evidence was saying. That changed in the mid-2020s. Advancements in DNA amplification and investigative genetic genealogy allowed forensic labs to extract usable profiles from samples once considered unusable. The damp towel, trace fibers, degraded DNA. What once returned nothing now returned direction. Investigative genetic genealogy does not name a suspect outright. It traces lineage, it maps family trees, it narrows the field. For the Kesse family, this represented the first real movement in years. Law enforcement has confirmed active leads. The suspect is no longer an abstract figure on grainy footage. They are a branch on a family tree. Jennifer Kesse have lived nearly 2 decades without answers. They have aged without watching their daughter reach milestones she was already planning. They did not stop asking questions. They did not allow silence to become resolution. Jennifer Kesse did not disappear because she was careless. She disappeared because someone exploited timing, environment, and anonymity. That anonymity is eroding. This case is not finished. This was the disappearance of Jennifer Kesse. Still unresolved, still active, still under analysis, still scanning, still listening.